Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're your shortcut to getting genuinely up to speed. We sort through, well, piles of sources, articles, notes, research to pull out those key insights, those surprising facts, and maybe a few aha moments for you.
Exactly. And today, our mission is pretty specific. We're unpacking the Mike Hayes Publicity Express notes. These are fresh off the press, so to speak, from a local Chamber of Commerce connectors meeting.
Right. So the goal isn't just, reporting facts. It's about really getting a feel for the pulse of a local business community. We want to get past the headlines, find those little details, those connections, really see what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, think of it like being a fly on the wall. You get that intimate view of the conversations, the stuff that actually builds these local networks.
Trying to understand that fabric, how people actually connect and collaborate in their own backyard.
Precisely. Seeing beyond just the formal agenda.
Okay, I'm ready. So what was the general feel of this meeting based on the notes? How did it actually play out?
Well, it sounds like, a fairly typical local networking event, but with this really unique, clever twist that stood out. After the usual intros from the chamber staff and the co-chair, they did this exercise called networking musical chairs.
Networking musical chairs. Okay, that sounds intriguing, maybe a bit chaotic, or was it strategic? How did that work?
Oh, definitely strategic. It was structured networking, but done really well. Attendees paired up for super quick chats, like 30 seconds each.
Just 30 seconds.
Yeah, rapid fire. Then they'd rotate, meet someone new, another quick chat. But here's the kicker, the really smart part. After a few rounds, everyone had to stand up and introduce the last person they spoke with to the whole room.
That's brilliant. So you had to actually listen, not just swap cards. You needed to remember something specific.
Exactly. It forces that genuine listening and, quick recall, really shifts it from just exchanging info to making a connection.
That's a fantastic icebreaker, way beyond the usual. What happened after that?
After a few rounds of the musical chairs thing, they moved into more open networking time and the standard chamber announcements. So it was a really purposeful way to get things started before the usual mingling.
Very clever. Okay, so with that kind of start, who was actually in the room? Let's get into the people, the businesses that make up this network.
Sure. Well, starting with the organizers, there was Holly, the Chamber's Director of Operations. The notes described her as handling everything else.
Sounds about right for that kind of role. The engine room.
Totally. And Grace, who's new to the team, she was managing projects and phones. And the meeting was hosted by a financial advisor with Edward Jones.
Okay, got the organizer. Now, the attendees. I saw some interesting professions mentioned in the notes, particularly legal and financial stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Patrick, an attorney, was there. He talked about his practice, business law, startups, contracts, M&A. Pretty standard stuff for a business lawyer. But here's what jumped out. He said about 75% of his work.
75? That seems really high for a business focus.
Right. 75% is actually estate planning.
Why is so much focus on that?
He really hammered home how vital a trust is for California homeowners, specifically to avoid probate. Apparently, probate here in California can be incredibly expensive and just drag on for years sometimes because of court backlogs and how the system works. So his goal, he said, is to make setting up those essential plans simple, affordable. Basically protecting families from that whole mess. It shows how personal legal needs mix with business.
That makes a lot of sense. A really practical service everyone homer probably needs to think about. Okay, and the financial advisor co-chairing.
Right. He brought in that broader economic view. There was even discussion about tariffs. And what's interesting is even at this local level, these big macro issues are clearly on people's minds. Someone even suggested using AI to understand tariff impacts better.
Wow, using AI for tariff analysis at a local chamber meeting. That's pretty forward-thinking.
Well, obviously, he's watching the markets, but he mentioned that from his longer-term view, the current situation isn't maybe as scary as some past events. But he shared this really insightful sort of human observation. He said a big part of his job these days feels like emotional counseling for his clients.
Emotional counseling.
Yeah.
I can absolutely see that. Managing the anxiety around money, especially with market swings. What does that actually look like? Is it just calming nerves?
I think it's deeper than just calming nerves. It's about providing that reassurance, that long-term perspective when the headlines are screaming doom and gloom, helping people avoid knee-jerk reactions based on fear. It really speaks to how personal finance is, especially for people who've saved their whole lives, building trust, keeping them focused.
That's a really valuable role, beyond just the numbers. Okay, so shifting gears from finance, what about health and wellness? Was that represented?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There was Karine, who's an acupuncturist and also a spiritual coach. Her focus is holistic health, looking at spiritual awareness and how it impacts well-being. And she's active in the chamber too, chairs the Lafayette Business Women's Group. She mentioned a smart thing they do.
Oh, what's that?
They alternate their monthly meeting times. One month it's morning, the next it's afternoon, just to make it easier for people with different schedules to attend.
That is smart, very practical, makes it more accessible. Anyone else in health?
Yes. There was a new chiropractor just returning to the area to open a practice, and their specialization sounded incredibly focused.
Focused how? Like a specific technique?
Even more specific, they only work in the functional side of chiropractic and exclusively with C1 and C2.
C1 and C2. So just the top two vertebrae in the neck. That's it.
That's it, right at the base of the skull. And they use a very objective, measurement-based approach.
Wow, that's incredibly niche. How does someone even build a practice around just those two vertebrae?
Well,
What's the benefit?
Yeah, well, the benefit for the patient is extreme precision, right? If you have issues specifically related to that area, they're the expert. Building the business likely relies heavily on referrals and becoming the go-to person for that very specific problem. They mention this focus is actually quite rare, especially in the East Bay.
A true micro-specialist.
Yeah.
Okay, and wasn't there also mention of support for people facing health crises?
Yes, absolutely. A representative from the cancer support community was there. They talked about providing that crucial non-medical support, support groups, workshops, exercise programs for patients and their families dealing with cancer. And the person speaking shared that they had a personal connection to the mission, which always adds that layer of deep commitment you often see in nonprofits.
That personal connection really fuels the passion, doesn't it? Okay, so we've covered finance, health. What about the creative side? Artists, designers, craftspeople in the mix.
Definitely a creative contingent. There was Molly, an artist getting ready to open her own studio, and Miriam, she's a preschool teacher, but she also does this amazing thing connecting local artists with buyers by organizing shows around the Bay Area, a real bridge between art and commerce.
That's a fantastic connector role, helping artists find their audience.
Yeah. And then we had Kristen focusing on residential landscape design, and also Maureen, who does garden design too, but more on the high-end residential side. So niches within niches, you know.
With different segments, even in the same field.
And then a real highlight for me from the notes, Kat, the goldsmith.
A goldsmith. You really don't see that every day. What's her specialty?
She has a local shop, does custom jewelry repairs, appraisals, but she also repurposes old jewelry, giving new life to pieces that maybe have sentimental value but aren't being worn.
Oh, I love that idea of repurposing.
And get this, she has 40 years of experience.
40 years as a goldsmith. That's incredible. That's true mastery of a craft.
Exactly. It's that kind of deep expertise, that dedication to a traditional skill that really anchors a community in some ways. Amazing.
Truly amazing. Okay, and what about those essential services like cleaning, organizing the things that keep businesses and homes running?
Yep, covered too. Catherine was there from a commercial cleaning and organizing company. And the interesting thing, it's a third-generation family business.
Third generation. Wow, that speaks volumes about stability and roots in the community.
Doesn't it? She mentioned they're looking to expand more right there in Lafayette. There was also someone named Logan, possibly in a similar organizing field, though the notes weren't super specific.
Okay, so a really wide range. Artists, finance, health, craftspeople, essential services. It's a full picture.
It really is. And that brings us to the nonprofits. They're such a vital part of the community fabric. Who is representing that sector?
There were a few, and they sounded truly impactful. First, there was G from an organization called Period Balls.
Period Balls, yes.
Yeah.
And admittedly, unusual name.
Definitely catches your attention.
Yeah.
What do they do?
It's an incredibly heartwarming group, despite the name. They do things like provide warm clothes for kids in hospitals, but they also grant wishes, kind of like Make-A-Wish. G specifically mentions sending characters like Moana and even mermaids to visit children.
Wait, mermaids? Visiting kids in the hospital?
Yeah.
That's magical. How does that work? What's the impact?
The notes didn't detail the logistics, but you can just imagine the impact, right? For a child going through a tough time, having a mermaid swim into their world, it's pure escapism, pure joy. A different kind of healing. And G also mentioned that through doing this work, they teach the kids within their own group about philanthropy, about giving back.
Wow. Teaching philanthropy through mermaid visits? That's actually genius. So powerful. Who else from the nonprofit world?
There was Madison from an organization called AIR. They work with foster youth, helping find safe environments and providing daily essentials. Just absolutely critical work.
Vital support for vulnerable kids. Absolutely.
And then Gina from the European Foundation, she connects the performing arts to the community. She's the chair and also the managing director of operations there.
Supporting the arts, another essential piece.
Definitely. So if you look at the whole picture here, you see this blend of, commerce and compassion. You've got businesses driving the economy, providing services people need. But woven right in, you have these nonprofits addressing social issues, supporting youth, promoting arts, fostering charity. It shows that whole ecosystem working together.
Yeah, when you step back from the individual intros, you really see it. People tackling everything from estate planning and market anxieties to neck alignment, art sales, and, well, mermaid visits for sick kids. It's the whole community, interconnected.
It really is a living network. So thinking about the future then, did the notes mention what's coming up? Any local events or activities?
It did. Sounds like a pretty active summer planned. One bit of news that probably got some smiles was about a new ice cream shop opening.
Oh, you can't go wrong with ice cream. What's the scoop?
Hey, nice one. It's called the Lafayette Scoop, opening in June. And they're bringing in some really well-loved Bay Area brands. Mitchell's Old Town Creamery, Fenton's. Sounds like it'll be a popular spot.
Oh, yeah, those are big names. That'll draw people in. Anything bigger or more chamber-focused?
Yep. They announced the Lafayette Art of Wine Festival mixer for July 30th. It was pitched as a larger event, open to all members, and businesses and nonprofits could have vendor booths. So a bigger platform for networking and visibility.
Okay, good opportunity for broader connections. Were there other ongoing things mentioned?
Yeah, the notes listed a few other ways the Chamber keeps people engaged, even though some specific events mentioned were past, like Taste of Lafayette. They highlighted ongoing things like the business women's group meetings we heard about, events for young professionals, and even volunteer opportunities for the community games.
So it's not just one-off events. It's about creating lots of different ways for different people to connect and participate.
Exactly. It shows that holistic approach. Oh, and they also put out a call for businesses to sponsor future connectors meetings, like the one these notes came from.
Ah, smart. A way for businesses to support the chamber and get some visibility at the same time. Keeps things funded and dynamic.
Right. Okay, so we've gone through the format, the people, the upcoming stuff. Let's step back. What are the real takeaways here? The key nuggets from this deep dive into just one local meeting?
I think fundamentally it underscores the incredible value of this kind of local face-to-face interaction, maybe even more valuable than we sometimes think. This meeting wasn't just a list of attendees. It showed the resilience and the practical adaptability of a local economy in action. You've got the financial advisor doing emotional counseling, the lawyer bridging big M&A with personal probate issues, that chiropractor with the super niche C1, C2 focus. It shows specialization can thrive locally.
Right. Those specific examples really stick. The attorney's probate focus, the chiropractor's niche, the goldsmith's 40 years, the mermaid visits. It's such a diverse mix.
It is, and it shows how intertwined these roles become in serving the community's needs, both practical and emotional.
And that networking musical chairs idea, it's more than just cute, right?
Yeah.
It's a really concrete example of creative thinking about how to build stronger connections.
Yeah.
Not just putting people in a room, but actively facilitating deeper interaction.
Exactly. It shows intentionality. And for you, the listener, what this does is give a really tangible glimpse, I think, into how a local community actually works, how it sustains itself. It's not abstract theory. It's these real people, real businesses, real nonprofits, adapting, connecting, supporting each other, one conversation, one introduction, one shared idea at a time.
It really drives home that communities are built through these layers of personal interaction.
And it highlights something important, I think. Even with all our amazing digital tools, all the easy online connecting, there's a certain texture, a depth of understanding, maybe even a level of trust that comes from these real-world interactions. It's just hard to replicate that online. This kind of meeting helps you grasp those nuanced, sometimes surprising local dynamics in a way scrolling a feed just can't.
That's a really powerful point to consider. So maybe as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something for you to think about. In a world that feels so saturated with digital clicks, easy online connections, what do you think is the enduring, maybe irreplaceable power of this kind of face-to-face community-level networking we just saw reflected here?
Yeah, how do these personal, often really local connections foster maybe a different kind of resilience?
Right.
Or spark a unique kind of innovation compared to just, big online networks?
It's worth considering. Think about the people we discussed, the goldsmith, the chiropractor, the nonprofit leaders, and maybe take a fresh look at your own neighborhood, see where those connections are happening.
Good thought.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.